Be Here in This Moment by Chip Rouge. We are about to enter sacred time. We are about to make this time and this place sacred by our presence and intention. I invite us to turn down the volume of our fears, to remove our masks, and to loosen the armor around our hearts. Breathe. Let go of the expectations placed on you by others and those they taught you to place on yourself. Be here in this moment. Breathe. Here. Brandy will light our chalice. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope as a sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. Before we sing the first hymn, let me remind you to leave yourselves muted. However, we want you and whoever is with you to sing with Jan and Mary as big and loud as you'd like. Make it a joyous experience. So let's all sing the opening hymn, Earth is Our Homeland, number 309.
Earth is our homeland, a song of stars of grace, wrought of the ages, an opal spot in space, dawn's far blue hills, soft nighttime still, dark ocean depths, smooth stones, for gifts sublime that hallowed time will sing, making deep thanksgiving known. Word is our glory, our breath of air, our cry, parables, letters, or star names in the sky, or myths that play as poets pray, bring meaning to our lives. For every praise that holds our days, we'll sing till the final day arrives. Music is wonder and alchemy of art, love's pure enchantment, communion for the heart. From chants to psalms, from jazz to romps, no soul may stay at rest. For still requiring sky of fire will sing, join with them in anthem blessed. Hope is our high star, the certitude love's brings. Silence our center, our living water spring. From aching heart, no self apart from whole and mystery. For gatherings of strengthening will sing throughout human history.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist community of Cambria. We are glad you have joined us this morning. As a Unitarian Universalist community, we celebrate religious diversity and welcome all who journey in search of faith and spirituality. The UUCC is a lay-led congregation inviting speakers from different religious traditions and spiritual or scientific backgrounds to speak at our pulpit. We encourage presentations covering a variety of topics and areas of interest to our community that connect us with the UU7 principles. Today's service centers around the fourth principle. We affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. As responsible religious seekers, we recognize that we are privileged to be free, to have resources to pursue life beyond mere survival, to continually search for truth and meaning, to exist beyond bounds of dogma and oppression, and to wrestle freely with truth and meaning as they evolve. My name is Diane DeMarco, and I am your worship associate this morning. I would like to extend a special welcome to today's guests and visitors. We're glad you joined us this morning under these challenging circumstances. If you are a guest and would like to introduce yourself, please raise your blue hand and unmute yourself when Susan calls your name.
I see no, excuse me, I see no blue hands, Diane.
Okay, thank you, Susan. If you are not on our mailing list, please visit our website at www.uuccambria.org so that we can keep you informed about all of our activities. And a reminder, if you wish to see this or any of our past Zoom services again, recordings of these services can be found on the UUCC website and Facebook as well. The membership committee invites non-members to consider becoming a member of our community. Please contact Janet Cooper or a board member if you are interested. Thank you. So again, good morning and welcome to everyone. Let us now sing the affirmation.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help, and to help, and to help one another.
We set aside this time for any short announcements that would be of interest to our UU community members and friends. Please keep your items short and to the point. For any items that need more explanation, please call or email the person after the service to be respectful of everyone's time. If you have an announcement, please raise your hand by clicking on the raise hand button near the lower right of your participant's window. When Susan calls your name, click the Unmute Me button near the lower left of the participant's window and then speak.
So as we begin, is there anyone in the sanctuary who has an announcement?
Yeah, I'd like to start us off today. We are off and running for our 2021 UUCC fundraiser. Goodwill will take our contributions and in return pay us $400 per load. You are already showing up with your generosity. The boxes are piling up. Just yesterday, while we were in rehearsal, Lori and Vince Napoli came with their own truckload and dropped it off, and it was quite impressive and very generous. So here's the deal. Please bring your giveaways to our sanctuary where we will be storing them until we have a truckload. And during the month of December, you can bring your items on Saturday between 11 and 11:15. And starting January 1st, there will be a 2-hour donation window from 11 to 1 o'clock every Saturday. Please check the newsletter for what you can and cannot bring. Thank you.
And Jan?
I'm next. This is for our holiday potpourri. It's coming along nicely. We have so far Judy Butler, Anita, Wayne, Marianne, Diane, Mary, me, and Randy, who wants to do two things. Um, but that's, I want to hear from everybody. If we have room in this program. I want to hear from every single person. Everybody.
That means everybody.
Thank you.
And for myself, I would like to remind people, if you have not sent in your pledge forms yet, your pledge form, please send that in to the PO Box 64 as soon as possible. If you need a new pledge form, you can email me, call me, and I will send you a new one. We need to get our 2021 pledges figured out so we know if we can finalize our budget. Next, we have Nancy. Would you please unmute yourself and make your announcement?
Hi. So I'm just reminding people that our Moving Toward Racial Justice group is meeting this Wednesday at 7 o'clock to discuss the book Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson, also a movie available on Amazon. The Zoom link is in the newsletter. It's in last week's, it should be in this week's as well. Or if you want, you can just email me and I'll send that to you. Anybody, if you haven't participated before, that's all right. New members or new participants are always welcome. Hope to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Andy, did you have an announcement?
Yes, thank you, Susan. Just a reminder that we're still collecting for Guest at Your Table donations. I have to pick a bunch up that have come to the sanctuary. Some have come to me directly. So please mail your checks to the UUCC mailbox, or contact me, and I'll pick them up, or you can leave them at the sanctuary. Guest at Your Table collection going through the end of the year.
Thank you, Andy. Next, we have Lou.
Men's group meets tomorrow at 10 o'clock on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Mary Ann.
Hi, everybody. Just a reminder, I am going to be setting up the Poetry Spoken Word in January, whether I'm here in Cambria or in Maui, wherever God puts me.
Thank you, Mary Ann. And I believe that is all of our announcements. Diane?
Next week, Jasmine Horan will present Educating Children as Whole Beings with Wisdom and Trust. We take this time to celebrate all those who are having a birthday this month. Birthdays are a special moment. It is time in which you feel as if the world is taking a moment to invite you into being, just like it was on the day you were born. If you have a birthday this month, please raise your blue hand, and when Susan calls your name, unmute yourself and reveal your special day.
Mary Ann, would you please unmute yourself?
I'm on the 17th.
Great. Don Howell.
I'm on the 14th.
And Chris Fox.
We didn't hear you, Chris. Could you repeat it?
Yes, I'm on
The 8th?
the 8th.
Oh, almost. Sue or John?
Sagittarian, so I'm on the 16th.
Wayne.
Wayne, you're muted. Wayne, can you tell us one more time and unmute yourself?
I'm trying to get him unmuted here.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Are now.
The 28th.
All right.
Wow. Any other December birthdays? That's a lot.
Happy birthday.
That's all we have in the sanctuary or in the congregation today.
Thank you, Susan. A lot of December birthdays. This birthday candle also honors all the friends and family members of this community who are celebrating birthdays this month. Sharing together some of our personal and significant joys and concerns brings us closer as a faith community. We invite you to share the milestones that are deeply felt as a part of your personal life. But please be mindful and considerate of all who come to worship with us this morning. This is a time of community building. The collective flames of these candles also embody all the joys and sorrows which may have gone unspoken today, but are deeply felt in this community. The first reading is titled For You by Walt Whitman. The sum of all known reverence I add up in you, whoever you are. Those who govern are there for you. It is not you who are there for them. All architecture is what you do to it when you look upon it. All music is what awakens from you when you are reminded by the instruments. The sun and stars that float in the open arc, the apple-shaped earth, and we upon it, the endless pride and outstretching of people, unspeakable joys and sorrows, the wonder everyone sees and everyone else they see, and the wonders that fill each minute of time forever. It is for you, whoever you are. It is no farther from you than your hearing and sight are from you. It is hinted by nearest, commonest, readiest. We consider Bibles and religions divine. I do not say they are not divine. I say they have all grown out of you and may grow out of you still. It is not they who give the life. It is you who give the life. Will you seek afar off? You surely come back at last in things best known to you, finding the best or as good as the best. Happiness, knowledge, not in another place, but this place, not for another hour, but this hour. Let us enter a place of peace and serenity where you are one with your spiritual being. Be at peace with your space where the absence of all that is temporal is its most cherished gift. Let us enter the stillness. Please come back now. The second reading is an excerpt from the Encyclopedia of Gandhi's Thoughts, titled The Mind of Mahatma Gandhi, found in section 14, titled Brotherhood, chapter 3, titled No Cultural Isolation for Me. In 1921, Gandhi wrote, I do not want my house to be walled in on all sides and my windows to be stuffed. I want the cultures of all lands to be blown about my house as freely as possible. But I refuse to be blown off my feet by any. I refuse to live in other people's houses as the interloper, a beggar, or a slave. Nothing can be farther from my thought than that we should become exclusive or erect barriers. But I do respectfully contend that an appreciation of other cultures can fitly follow, never precede, an appreciation and assimilation of our own. In 1947, Gandhi wrote, "I am deeply interested in the efforts of the United Nations Economic, Social, and Cultural Organization to secure peace through educational and cultural activities. I fully appreciate that real security and lasting peace cannot be secured so long as extreme inequalities in education and culture exist as they do among the nations of the world. Light must be carried even to the remotest homes in the less fortunate countries, which are in comparative darkness. And I think that, in this cause, the nations which are economically and educationally advanced have a special responsibility." The anthem today features the world-renowned cellist Yo-Yo Ma in a video performing the prelude from Bach's Cello Suite No. 1. Today, we have something special for you. On November 20th, just a couple of weeks ago, David Marchese, a writer for the New York Times, held an interview with Yo-Yo Ma, one of the top cellists in our era. The piece was published in the Times with the title Yo-Yo Ma and the Meaning of Life. For their debut appearances at our virtual pulpit, I'm delighted to introduce Ted Key and the words of David Marchese. But first, David included a preamble as follows. The immensity of Yo-Yo Ma's talent is such that he would be globally admired if all he ever did was appear on stage or in a recording studio and then vanish after the last notes faded from his cello. that Ma has instead used his gifts in the service of spreading humanistic values via cross-cultural musical collaboration, civic engagement, and huge amounts of heart means that his connection with the public goes far deeper than mere admiration. Ma's compelling instinct for compassion has been on much-needed display during this pandemic year. In the spring, he streamed a performance series, Songs of Comfort, on YouTube and social media. During the summer, he broadcast a performance of Bach's cello suites in honor of those to COVID-19. And on December 11th, he will release Songs of Comfort and Hope, an album recorded with the pianist Catherine Stott. People need each other for the support beyond the immediate staples of life, Ma says. They need music. And I also want to introduce Robert Wilkinson, yes, both Robert and Ted. Take it away.
So tell me, do you think music is fundamentally good?
That's a good question to ask and very hard to answer. It's as if you're asking me, are people fundamentally good? I don't think people are fundamentally bad, but in the interaction of figuring things out or wanting more of something or less of something, then complex things come into play.
I ask because your work is rooted in the idea of music as a value positive, ennobling thing. But music is also used in every possible awful context. Can we delineate music from the intentions of people using it?
Music connects human beings. It brings people together. You can also describe it as energy, sound that moves air molecules. So a marching band will energize an athletic game or bring people to war. The bagpipe is used for war, for entertainment, for funerals, for weddings. Music is not one thing. It's something that people react to. But your question, is that good or bad? It depends on circumstances and individuals and timing. The invention of something starts out being more or less value neutral. Agriculture, nothing bad about it. But if you're able to grow a lot of vegetables and I can't grow any on my land, I might want to get some of your vegetables.
Here's something I've been thinking about, particularly over the past 4 years, and I'll raise it with you fully aware that my engagement with music is minuscule compared with your own.
Don't say that. I know you like music. You're interested. You think about it. So don't assume I know more than you.
I'll accept that. All right. I've been wondering if in the past I had too easily allowed myself to believe that engaging with music or culture more generally was also a way of engaging with politics, in the sense that doing so was implicitly promoting humanistic values or empathy. Now I can't help thinking that was at least partially a complacent waste of time. And while I was doing that, some parallel Neanderthal was probably spending the equivalent time figuring out how to advance odious politics. Is my rambling making any sense to you?
Of course it makes sense. It's about whether you believe in a utilitarian world or you believe that if you look out on the night sky, you see the infinitude of variety in nature and the unreachable wonders of what it is and how we fit in. Morons are generally not thinking about the infinitude of the universe. They're thinking of a different world. And you have to be able to extract certain truths. When you write something that's beautiful, you think you found a bit of truth. It flows, it sings. You can do that. David, is that useful? I know the lady who spent 20 years helping to find the so-called God particle, the Higgs boson. Is that useful? I just read this piece that says that Newton, because of the bubonic plague, had to leave university and went back to the family farm. And during that time, he developed all these incredible theories that we are beneficiaries of hundreds of years later. Is that useful?
Physics is useful. Is spending years overvaluing political utility? Is spending years overvaluing the political utility of art?
All I'm saying is, if you dropped out and just focused on politics, then where are you drawing from? Where are your inner resources? What's going to keep you going for 50 years? And do you know that you are actually going to make more of a difference by focusing on politics than on culture you're passionate about? You don't know what you might help make happen. Our world is full of the result of unintended as well as intended consequences. The two naturally go together.
What was your own evolution with music and politics?
I think of it almost in terms of young children and how they engage in the world. Growing up is becoming familiar with a series of rolling concentric circles. You're kind of circling your space, your home, your family. You're exploring all around. So to your question, becoming a parent was a huge thing. Once you have a child, your sense of time completely changes. You start thinking about a longer stretch of time where you have to be responsible for another person's life. You have to think differently about responsibilities. If you have a parent who becomes ill and you're there, that's a familial responsibility. A friend is in trouble. You help the friend. These are extensions of that concentric circle. New neighbors move in, you try to welcome them. It's all the connections we make in life. Once you're connected, you feel responsibility. And connected means that it's a circular loop. I know you, but you have to know me too. There's an energy circle that goes back and forth.
And do you believe culture can drive that?
That's right. I knew fairly quickly in my career that you had to create memories. In order to have a career, you have to make sure that somebody remembers your name as opposed to, oh, that Asian dude who does the violin type instrument. It's about connection and culture. I used to ask people, what is culture? It's so complex. My latest try for culture is that it's everything that humans have invented that helps us survive and thrive. Think about language. Think about agriculture. Think about navigation. Think about engineering. Think about politics. We invented our nation. And guess what? The people who invented our nation, they were younger than you. That's my vote for giving custodial responsibility to younger people sooner rather than later. They're willing to sacrifice certain things in order to have an authentic life in what they buy, whom they buy from, how they live. They're going to live through moments of change that I know I'm not going to be capable of helping with. But I can be a cheerleader. That's one way of looking at responsibility. It's not about, oh, I have to care about society. I'm using culture. It doesn't need to be defined as, I'm going to play for you this piece of music. It's not that. It's more like you and I talk and a connection is activated. Because you're a thoughtful person, I'm going to get something from this conversation that is going to help me build a mental structure. I met this guy, David, who's interested in a broad number of people and really does his homework and is a modest person, but he cares a lot and is curious. That's a good frame to remember somebody by. That's important.
There have been arguments in the air lately about cultural appropriation. I'm curious how you see them, because you're someone who has obviously thought hard about how to engage with other cultures.
Look, my favorite subject in college was anthropology. Studying early cultures was interesting because so much of this conversation that we're talking about is stuff that comes from essentially the last 500 years. Anthropology gave me a method of looking at value structures of different societies. These things take me into beyond the contested 300 to 500 year era that we're really focused on.
So you see contemporary cultural arguments as blips?
In order to try to understand, I'm trying to gain perspective. The anthropological part of that is that you start out from a position of beginner's mind, no judgment. Tell me about yourself. What's important to you? I just want to know. I'm not going to be judgmental. Later on, I can go back and think, who is David? What made him curious? Was he born that way, or did something happen in his life? And how did having children change him? Because he said something about the last 4 years, his kids are 3 and 5. So is that sort of family child related?
Are you asking me for real?
Yes.
The change comes from having kids and then looking at the way politics is going and thinking about what kind of world my girls are going to grow up in and what I can do to make it better.
Exactly. I'm a grandparent. Teddy and Oliver are both preschool age. Teddy is going to be 83 years old in the year 2100. I will be long dead by then. But what kind of world is he going to live in? It'll be past the singularity moment. Are there going to be 500 million people already washed under the ocean? Are we going to live with this fractured sense of the world? This is my 2 little grandchildren. It's not an abstract thing.
Are you confident that your work is helping bring about the world that you would like your grandkids to live in? Not that you'll necessarily get the result you want, but that you're doing what you can to achieve it.
I don't know. That's the kind of question that I ask myself.
I can't tell if the way you answered my earlier question about cultural appropriation by talking about anthropology and getting beyond a post-Enlightenment perspective is how your mind works, or was a noble way of sidestepping a potentially controversial subject?
Well, subjects are controversial for a reason. This is something that people have to argue out. I can tell you, my mind is very weird. The Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert, I actually studied them, and I loved that group. I spent time there, and the thing, I'll give you the fast takeaway, is that they did trance dancing. They did this dance for hours, women in a circle, clapping. They got into trance. Here is a snippet from the documentary called Distant Echoes.
The trance dance is the high point of the Bushmen's collective music making, a synthesis of their music, their beliefs, and their medicine. To the Bushmen, the trance dance is a gift from heaven. Its origins are buried in ancient history, but if the cave paintings of trance dancing have been accurately dated as 40,000 years old, then what I am seeing is one of the oldest human rituals known to man. The choice of the dances is dictated by the women in the group, but it is generally the men, and often the musicians, who dance until one of them goes into trance. Every song is about an animal or a bird, and at the onset of trance, the spirit of the creature enters the body of the dancer, enabling him to reach a transcendental state.
The next day, I interviewed the women and said, "Why do you do this?" They gave me the answer: because it gives us meaning. Their answer has been my answer for culture since that time. I'm not a crackpot person. I'm absolutely a science-based, evidence-based person. But because of the practice of music, I delve into the inner life of whatever we are. I don't have any answers, but I keep poking around to try to figure out a little bit more. So in terms of cultural appropriation, I just want to say that academia has certain standards, business has certain standards, the arts have certain standards, politics has certain standards. They're very different standards. If you tell me something that's precious, and then I take it as my own, when I use it, I need to give credit. We do that in academia. We don't do that in the arts. Acknowledge where it's coming from and share in the wealth.
During the pandemic, people, as always, turned to music for solace. Have you noticed common denominators in music that comforts?
I've been asking myself all my life, what is the purpose of music? It's like trying to find the meaning almost every day, because the purpose yesterday may not be the purpose today. What the pandemic has crystallized in my mind is that we need music because it helps us to get to very specific states of mind. It's not like, listen to my music, it will help, but rather, everybody wants to get to certain states of mind during the day, during the cycle of the season. And during a pandemic, with the alienation of not having social contact, music is also that physical force. It's energy. Then you get to more complex things, like how certain songs elicit memory. Certain smells can get to an immediate childhood memory in of your grandmother's baking apple pie. Music can do the same thing. Your first kiss, your wedding. And unfortunately, during this time, we've lost a number of friends, and you have virtual memorial services, and you play music for that. All of which is to say that you do whatever is needed with music. We need music to make us feel at equilibrium through hard times and good times.
People have drawn so much from Bach's cello suites this year. Those pieces were originally composed as study exercises, and yet they've become these icons of catharsis. What's their magic?
A couple of things. Bach wrote the cello suites in the only time that he was not in the service of the church. It's something like 1720 to 22. This was a time when he didn't have to write cantatas for Sundays. He could experiment further. So the way I look at the suites, and this is a roundabout way of getting to your question, is that I imagine Bach saying to himself, hey, I play a lot of instruments. I play the organ, I play the piano, I play the oboe, and there's the cello. I'm going to figure out what I can do with the cello. He says, I'm going to learn everything about the instrument. He writes the first suite, second, third suites. What does he discover? Wow, I now know exactly how the cello functions. Then he says, now, because I have an experimental nature, I want to figure out what the cello can't do. One thing the cello can't do is hold many notes at once. So he says, okay, how am I going to do that? Maybe I can figure out a way to invent something. Aha! How about if I use the listener's ear to fill in what I can't do polyphonically? I give you one note, so it's in your memory. Then maybe I leave it, but do it in such a way, then in about 7 seconds, I have the following note, but you still remember the first note. He does that with different voices, and especially with the bass line. And starting with the fourth suite, he gets more and more inventive in creating larger structures, sort of like a universe filled with neutron stars and galaxy black matter. Sort of like saying, I can get you into a different world by fiddling with my permutations and your subconscious reception of them. The fourth, fifth, and sixth become more experimental. The fifth one, he turns down the cello by a note so he gets richer chords. The sixth one, he actually writes for a 5-stringed instrument instead of a 4-stringed instrument, the viola pomposa. He's expanding the range of the instrument and literally changing it. Here is the prelude to start the fifth suite, the one in which I had to lower the tuning of my strings.
Where does emotion come into this? What does this have to do with healing or solace?
Let's say if you're depressed and you're stuck, you're essentially kind of paralyzed. Your neurons are operating at low level, low capacity. Music is a stimulus. You respond to it, but you're responding subconsciously to something that makes your brain active.
So the ingenuity of Bach's music fires the neurons, which causes positive feelings?
Exactly. In a way, it's the Socratic method. Musically, the suites are asking, how would you find an answer? Maybe that's all a fantasy of mine, but the evidence is that people find something in this music. I know I do.
Do you think about your public presence at all in the context of being Chinese American? We are in this moment of rising anti-Chinese racism in the United States, and your persona seems directly in contrast to negative stereotypes about Chinese Americans. Is that intentional?
You're asking a pretty broad question vis-a-vis the United States. It's almost like 6 or 8 different countries of very different characters that have been stitched together to form the United States of America. But here's one way of answering. When I started playing concerts on a regular basis in my early 20s, in Europe, the most often asked question was, how can an Oriental like you understand music? That was a bit of this stereotype of the Asian with a slide rule. Being a musician at that time was an anomaly. Now the number of Asians in orchestras, it's fairly large. When I started out, Seiji Ozawa was the conductor of the Boston Symphony, and I always credit him with breaking the mold. He was a long-haired, hippie-ish kind of conductor. He was a cool guy. Because of him, I'm almost second wave. It was easier. Now people are talking about how does it feel to be one of the very few African Americans in a major orchestra? Anthony McGill is now being featured. He's a great artist. He is such a beautiful soul. There are fabulous African American musicians, but I think the environment needs to be more comfortable.
More broadly, how do you think about this specific environment in which you're playing music?
For me as a musician, I try to be aware of where I am. As a performer, my job is to make the listener the most important person in the room. The only way to avoid burnout is to care about where you are. My good friend Manny Axe would always say to me that it doesn't matter what you did yesterday. If you're here today, that's what counts. Being present, caring. You're working with living material that goes back to memory. The The living material is only living if it is memorable. Not only that it's memorable, but that you pass it on. That is what I'm thinking about with every single interaction, whether it's a kid, someone on the street, in a concert hall, or with you, David. It's the same thing. How to be present, because if you're not,
then why are we here?
That's it. You're acknowledging someone's existence by being present. It may take a lot more energy, but boy, is it much more rewarding. It makes me happy. It makes people happy. It's wonderful.
We'll be looking forward to more from Ted and Robert in the near future. Nicely done. Thank you. Normally, at this time, we receive offerings from our congregants. However, due to the virtual format of this service, we invite you to make your offering in one of the methods shown on the slideshow. These methods are posted in the newsletter and on the UUC website. Please keep in mind that our congregation is entirely self-governed by the democratic process. One of the privileges of our free church tradition is to provide all of the financial support for our many ministries from among ourselves. Generosity, therefore, is one of the spiritual values we recognize as central to our personal and our institutional well-being. You are invited to participate in the blessing of giving by sending us an offering. Thank you. Thank you, Mary and Jan. Our thanks for all the gifts given and received for the work in this community. Let us now sing the doxology. Please note we are singing a different verse from usual. Words are on your screen.
Ours be the poems of all tongues, all things of loveliness and worth, all hearts are ages and all songs, one life, one beauty, all
join in singing the closing hymn, Let All the Beauty We Have Known, number 326.
Let all the beauty we have known illuminate our hearts and minds. Rejoice in wonders daily shown, in faith and joy and love that binds. We celebrate with singing hearts, loveliness of sky and earth, the inspiration of the arts, the miracle of every birth, life's music and its poetry, surround and bless us through our days. For this we sing in harmony, together giving thanks and praise.
Now let us recite the valediction. The flame of this chalice will no longer burn today, but the light of the flame within our hearts continues to shine brightly, illuminating the love felt in our community. After the benediction, please click on the gallery view button in the upper right corner of your screen. Yo-Yo Ma once said, "Music, like all of culture, helps us to understand our environment, each other, and ourselves. Culture helps us to manage a better future. Culture helps turn them into us. And these things have never been more important. Go now in peace."